All
So I don't know
right.
if you saw, there was actually a tournament in Japan that just finished, and there's like almost 700 players in Standard. Mono Red came in third. The deck list, the entire deck list, 75 cards was $58. So cheaper
No
than the price of
way.
Shields. Yeah,
Oh my goodness, I love that.
three bloodthirsty adversaries was half the cost of the deck almost.
Oh, that's incredible. I
So
love that's one of those things. People talk
I
about
could
mono
throw
red
like
and
20
yeah,
bucks and get full art foils of like most of the deck.
that's incredible. That's actually one of the things about mono red that we don't talk enough about is it's easy to look at mono red, especially if you play on arena, especially if you play best of one. It's easy to think, oh, I've seen this deck a million times. I'd really like something to change. But the reality is, it's one of the most consistently budget friendly, paper decks in various formats. It's some flavor of mono red aggro or mono red burn. Like it just is. And I love that. And I think that is an important thing as far as the game is concerned. And yeah, and here we have the mono red deck, even on the draw, delivering a pretty impressive setup against Sir Hamilton here. Now the Beanstalk is live, so who knows what's about to happen. And the domain, there are 4 of the 5 land types represented as well. So we could easily be seeing a leyline binding come down here.
So I actually find this matchup a little difficult from Mono Red's perspective, and I've been playing a lot of ramp, and I just keep beating up. So this deck has 4 ossification, 4 leyline binding. So say 1 to 2 mana removal spells. This version, in addition, is playing 2 Virtue of Persistence, so a little bit heavier on black spells to have access to this powerful enchantment, which not only kills your creature, gives you 3 life. You have Herd Migration that gains you 3 life. And that's just, dealing with your board. Then they have an Atraxa. Then, Topiary Stompers online. This version's on 3 Archangels. So much life gain, stuff like that. The deck can definitely get under. But I actually prefer like this configuration that Sir Hamilton's playing much more than the Virtue or the Invasion of Alara.
Yeah.
While the Invasion deck does really flashy things, you're kind of dirtling and you're just like, hopefully my opponent doesn't do anything for turns 1 through 3, and I have a leyline binding.
Yep. Yeah, and agreed. And it's funny, we saw some people bring the Alara deck. They were here today. They did compete. Now, I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head as to where they landed, but I can't help but notice in looking at the top 8, the version that Sir Hamilton brought, which is kind of the more straightforward ramp, package. Well, it's here, and it's done a great job today, making it into the top 8, going undefeated so far. Whereas the Alara decks didn't quite get there. Yeah, exactly. Flashy is a good word for it. Like it's when it does the thing, it's neat, but yeah.
One of the things I always kind of keep an eye out with the mono red decks is land counts and then the configuration of utility lands. So I feel like a big thing with people, they think, the Tom Ross, Sly Red, I'm going to play 17 lands, not realizing those decks were very unique in the sense that everything was like a 1-drop or like a pump effect. Generally speaking, you're going to want to be between 22 and 24 lands. In particular, I notice people a lot of times skipping with the old Embercleave Torbrand list, where you're playing 4 drops, or like Chandra, Torch of Defiance in there. So people would always skip on lines, and that was always the wrong thing, especially in like Explorer Historic, where you have Den of the Bugbear, Ramanap Ruins, Sokazan. Like there's things you can do with your mana on every turn, so hitting 5 lines isn't the end of the world. So Mishra's Foundry is usually the kind of default utility line beyond Sokuzan. This list is actually running 2 Sokuzans. I don't hate that, but it can run you into some complications at time. I personally prefer Murex. So Foundry can get in for 2, but Murex is more redundancy. The Foundry, I find at times just gets kind of, it falls behind too quickly. Like it's a 2-2.
Sure.
Like in this case here, like you're not going to be able to attack, where at least Myrex, you can kind of differentiate your threats and lets you play at more of an instant speed opportunity. In addition, I think regardless of what you're doing, so the one bonus of Myrex is at least it taps you for red on the turn you play it, so you can technically on turn 2 double spell. There's a lot of 1-drops, so you do want to double spell, especially if you have like a Swiss Spear plus like a shock or some type of effect. Don't play for Mishra's Foundries in your mono red deck.
Oh
You're
my
gonna get too
goodness.
many times where you're just not multi-spelling, and that's gonna hurt you more than anything, especially with the Godric's now that really care about getting those second permanents. I've played a lot of mono red in case you haven't noticed. And at this point
Yeah.
of the game, you go escape and concede. So
Yep. No attracts hit in the field. That's that. Yep.
so
It is what
what
it
are
is.
the answers for this mono red deck to a result of Traxa? So one piece of tech that's really interesting out of this deck is Soulless Jailer. So Soulless Jailer will prevent like the ETB style effects, kind of things being cheated into play. So if against the Alara version, Itali, anything like that, kind of shuts it off of that avenue. Beyond that, there's a single copy of Twisted Fealty, which we see come in.
Okay.
Unfortunately, in this matchup, like Witch Stalker, Frenzy doesn't do much.
Mm-hmm.
Koth could be reasonable, given that they have quite a large density in terms of sweeper and exile-based effects. But then again, against this ramp deck, it's not great because between Ossification and Leyline Binding, they have 8 cheap answers for your Planeswalkers. Where against like Blue-White Control, they don't have that same. But I'd probably bring in Jaya, I'd probably bring in the Koth as well, and probably call it a day. They only have a single copy of Itali, so it's not really worth it in that regard. The Phoenix Trick's your weakest thing. In addition, I'd probably cut the Monstrous Rage.
Yeah.
I'd probably keep the Play with Fire over Monstrous Rage. So while Monstrous Rage does represent a burst of damage, it's a dead card without creatures, and it also exposes you for a 2-for-1. So I usually it's a better like the theory of the card. I could just shoot a bunch of damage. It's much better in creature mirrors. Or kind of
100%.
screwing up against like in mono red in the mirror. The big thing is, you have a 2 toughness creature. They play with fire it. Well, you monstrous rage it, and now it gets that added bonus and toughness.
Mm-hmm.
So you fizzle their effect. So you can kind of play defensively as well.
Absolutely. I've definitely used Monstrous Rage to fizzle cutdowns, and it feels great. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That kind of, and obviously if you have a Swift Spear online, for example, and you can get the prowess in addition to everything else going on, that does, to your point, it represents a ton of damage. But we see a lot of the incidental life gain. Play with Fire is just 1 mana guaranteed 2 damage, and that's, and you can get the Scry, which might be relevant as well. So I agree. I think it's a little more reliable. And I think that goes a long way in this match. All right, so here we go. So they mulligan down to 6. They have a 2-lander, and they're going to let the Bloodthirsty Adversary go. How do you feel about that?
I would put the Lightning Strike back.
Okay.
3 damage is like they're not going to have cheap creatures for you to interact with. 3 damage gets basically voided, and having like in this matchup, you want consistent, like reoccurring damage sources as opposed to individual.
Right.
In addition, I'd probably put the Scoundrel in turn 2. Well, normally Feldon is advantageous to buff it because they don't get the people don't want to block it in the sense because they'll give you card advantage. In this matchup, they have so much removal as well as exile that it doesn't really matter. Because if you want that turn, you want Charming Scoundrel with the Wicked token, at least they take an extra point of damage that way.
True.
Kind of go from there. All in all, like minor little things in that case, but Feldon is not really that good in this matchup.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and it's funny, actually, I personally don't play a ton of mono red myself, but I'm really enjoying this analysis, and thank you for really diving deep on this one. Because I guess I didn't really appreciate just the level of life gain that there is, especially in this deck specifically. The Virtual Persistence, the Herd Migration, like everything gains life. And that's really unfortunate.
Like I'm 9-0 or 10-0 so far with switching to ramp. Like there's too many mono red mirrors, which were pretty much a coin flip. But there's some level of like sequencing involved, but ultimately a mono red mirror like play draw has a big factor in it, and then it's just what part of your deck, did you draw Phoenix Chicks or did you draw interaction? Who had Kamano on 1? But there's always kind of that notion while you're playing mono red, it's a brain dead deck. there's a lot of sequencing, and the thing that people often don't realize is there's a low threshold for error in these types of decks. You have basically, I'd say, 4 to 5 turns to try to win the game. The sequencing of every one of your cards. So you have fewer game actions to try to get a win. And while there are the games where you're going to go turn 1 Kumano, then Swift Spear, Monsters Rage, there's many games like we see here where, well, there's the idea, do we attack in and Lightning Strike the Seed Shark? Do we get Godric going? Do we just attack with Godric? Do we hold back? So like opting to go with the power here. The decision, do we play Sokuzan the last turn, right? Well, now Sokuzan will turn on the ability for flying. You have the fire breathing. So,
and I think that was a fantastic line by Kylie there. Yeah, that seemed like the right move to me. And there's 1 mana left over, and so that might as well go into Godric. So that's 6 damage coming in, and then the Wicked Roll pings for an additional 1. That Lightning Strike represents lethal unless Sir Hamilton can gain some life here.
It's a big play. So we see white. That's ossification.
Okay.
And likely no counter spells for this matchup. That's not the axis you typically want to be fighting. One thing to note that, that's big.
Yep.
That probably locks it up. They are playing 3 Sunset Revelry in the side.
Okay.
So impactful in terms of Revelry hits you on so many fronts. So it's going to gum up the board. It's going to be 4 life, typically the card draw. And we're seeing as the mountain flings, I will say they are using the correct mountains, the best mountains.
Absolutely. Now, and that frustration is very understandable because at this point, Sir Hamilton's at 5. There's a Lightning Strike in hand. A Lightning Strike, a play with fire. I mean, there are a ton of ways to just find 2 damage. Granted, the board is gummed up right now, which is definitely unfortunate. And so, if only that had been something a little more... Yeah, well, just all it needed was some more targeted damage. Just a play with fire off the top, and that's game.
So one thing like Sir Hamilton did wisely was there's kind of that notion my channel is an instant speed. They did it on their turn while Killy was still tapped out, just realizing, we need this 3 life now.
Yep.
As opposed to, and this is going to be a game where they ended up cutting a play with fire and kept in the Phoenix Chick.
Yep.
Which just doesn't do much in this matchup.
Yeah. Well, and that's brilliant. And to illustrate your point, if they had waited, so if Sir Hamilton had waited till Keely's turn, and they had top decked a Lightning Strike, for example, or a play with fire, Keely untaps, goes to Lightning Strike the face. In response, Sir Hamilton channels. In response to that, the play with fire or the other Lightning Strike shows up. And that's just GG's. And here's Sokenzin, but there are enough blockers down, so it just doesn't
one off
do enough. Oh my goodness. So they're gonna send it. They're gonna put
exactly 7 lands.
Oh my goodness.
Do they get aggressive with the host Seed Shark or Chrome Host?
That's kind of the dream, right? Is that they attack with the Seed Shark, and then you top deck the Phoenix Chick. I mean, that's the dream. But Sir Hamilton knows about Phoenix Chick. That's not a surprise. So I can't imagine that the Seed Shark is going to turn sideways. Oh, that's more life gain off the Virtue. Oh, that hurts. I mean, that said, there's still only a 3. Oh, but here we go. Full send. Get out of 6. What is that top card? Sir Hamilton's up a game. This is just to stay in.
Oh!
There it is.
No, don't
flash a good game. Just rip it and see if you got it.
No, you wait for them to do it. You do it on their upkeep.
Oh,
okay. They stole it.
Okay.
But, okay, so this is the exact line I was mentioning because they could have channeled to gain 3 life in response. Right. So you go to their turn, let them do their game action, or you do it on their upkeep, at least.
Or at least let it pass to your end step because they may want to do it on your end step while they have untapped mana. And then in response, you strike the face. Yeah.
Regardless, you do the good game to fake it and be like, no, I didn't draw it. Oh, no. And then you're like, but actually, you activated my trap card.
Yeah, I respect that. Yeah, absolutely. And with that, Yeah, we're going on to game 3. I love me a good game 3. All right.
So really need to see the Monstrous Rage come out, I think. So they're looking to bring in the Witchstalker Frenzy. Decent against the Compost Seed Shark that we saw pretty much almost take over the game there towards the end. I don't know if they have more sharks in the side.
Yeah, I mean, you got the Witchstalker Frenzy. It hits the sharks, it hits the stompers, it hits the Archangel of Wrath, which has an opportunity to be really nasty in this matchup. So I think any opportunities you have to answer those, you need to take. And not to mention, if the shark is allowed to stick around for a little bit, you may need to answer a pretty sizable incubator token. So 5 damage for as little as 1 mana seems pretty good to me.
It's always a balance, like how reactionary you want to be, because like you're not at a certain point you don't want to play on that axis. You want to kind of go face as much as possible in this matchup. Like if you're spending turns interacting, Malta 5.
Okay.
No Triome.
Ramp deck Malta 5. Red deck is starting with 2 Kumano Faces Kakazan, Lightning Strike, Feldon, and Godric in hand, and 2 lands. I mean, is that not exactly where you want to be?
All right, so this is the Revenge Tour.
Here it is.
Okay, so in this case here, I would have held the Charming Scoundrel, and I would have gone with Feldon because you have the Godric.
Right.
So the reason for that is because, so there's 2 sides. This line isn't too bad because it guarantees that your Godric comes down next turn if you don't hit a land.
Okay.
The other way, and this actually works out pretty nice because Kumano flipping. So I'll take it back. You know what? Give him the line. Celebration just cares.
Holy cow. Yep.
Enters the battlefield.
Yep. It doesn't care how it got there. You don't need to cast him. Yep. All right, perfect. I mean, there's Sunset Revelry.
Won't be enough though.
No.
So you go Swiss Sphere, you go Kumano. No, you go Swiss Sphere, Kumano, and then Monstrous Rage, and you win, or come close to winning.
That seems good. Yeah, that's exactly it. So Swiss Sphere, you play first, get a Prowess trigger when Kumano hits. That deals an additional ping. Swing with, and that'll put Godric live. Or Godric in the air, rather. And then you Monstrous Rage. Let's see, do they understand, or are they going to go the Swift Sphere route?
That kind of maximizes your damage for the turn.
It sounds correct to me. And then the following turn, you have Feldon to take advantage of the Chapter 2 on Kumano, assuming your opponent's still alive, which is definitely not a given. All right. Yep. Full send, let them declare blockers, and then Monstrous Rage, whatever is getting through.
Yeah. So they're
going to double block the etchings. That is a bold choice.
So that's 5, 9, 11. So the choice is,
I think.
No, I think here I would have just put it all. Oh, that works.
That's perfect because the Monstrous Roll gives trample.
Yeah.
And so, yep, that allowed, all of that to trample through, and etching survived.
I think it actually didn't matter because even if they target Swiss Spear, it gets the boost, so it gets 3 power. So it kind of offsets anyways. So we are in the semis. We have Mono Red versus Esper Control. And this is, I believe, the loss that Yushi took in the Swiss rounds. And then Golgari versus Orzhov. So 4 unique decks. The Esper midrange, Esper aggro did not survive. It was Esper Control as the one true Esper.
All right.
So this matchup,
very cool.
Again, can be somewhat difficult. Wandering Emperor is obviously a pain. Void Rend, Sunfalls, Virtues, lots of cheap. The big thing is you have an ability to get under the counter spells, which is good. Mm-hmm. But the way this hand, so obviously on the draw is a little rough.
But yeah, here we are.
Yeah.
Kumano Faces Kakazan on 1, Swift Spear on 2. That Make Disappear is clutch. It's unfortunate if you're Kylie, but if you're in Riley's situation, you are very grateful that you had that 2 mana counter when you did. Especially because that Monstrous Rage was in hand. Riley didn't know that was coming, but it would have, and it would have hurt.
Yeah. The thing is, in this matchup, this is again where I was saying the rages are a little rough. So there's 4 Shieldred's Edict. which
Mm-hmm.
can kind of mess you up at times. 3 Go for the Throats, 3 Void Rens
Oof.
is targeted removal, plus the 2 Wander. So this version's only on 2 Wandering Emperors, but a card that may come up as a reasonable kind of just drag them out kind of effect is 2 Teferi, who slows the sunset and puts you to sleep. Just gaining 2 life every turn kind of offsets a lot of these incidental damage points. We got 2 Teferi Temporal Pilgrim, and then 2 Invasion of New Phyrexia / Teferi Akosa of Zalfir. So I'm not gonna lie, yesterday I crafted those for a blue-white tokens list,
Nice.
and I played the entire set with refusing to read what that Teferi did. I just said this creates a bunch of knights, and I'm playing tokens, and this has got 6 damage and 6 damage to the face. I went through just to the face, kind of.
I love it. Well, and honestly, those tokens are enough to make that card good. You know, it's like, yeah, if you can flip it, and you know, that Teferi it's a fine card, but I don't know if you can't, like, those tokens are where the money's at, in my opinion. So yeah, no, I think you played it just fine. I see no
Every
issue.
set, there's at least a card where it's just like, I refuse to read this card. I refuse to learn what it does until it becomes meta. It's just, you know what? I'm happy for you. I'm sad for you. I don't know, but I ain't reading all that.
Right? You know, I realized that was going to be a thing in Magic moving forward when we got to Strixhaven, and I saw the Deans, and it's like, you know what? And I've read all of them once, and I cannot tell you what most of them do. All right. So here we go. So we got Void Rend. So Riley here is spending 2 and 3 mana answers on 1 and 2 mana threats. And as a result, I mean, they're hanging on here, and Kylie is not getting anywhere near the purchase on this board that they want. However, Riley is at 14, and Kylie is representing more and more damage, and Riley only has 1 card left in hand. You know, they need to find some card draw fast, or this is going to be over.
Yeah, so normally, like, it's tempo disadvantage to be doing that. Like, you know, your 3-4 removal spells.
Mm-hmm.
There is an element of redundancy here. So a big thing with this Esper list is just surviving that initial wave, especially with the, like, Killy struggling on lands here. If you're able to get some of these threats out of the way, there is that angle with mono red. You also have to be mindful of just this list is packing 8 burn spells, so you have to keep your life total at a reasonable amount. Right. Whereas against, we saw in earlier rounds, like, you know, those mono white aggro lists, right? Once you deal with the wave of humans, you know, you get swept twice or you get hit by 4 pieces of removal, they pretty much pack it in. This list does have some redundancy. Even something like here with the Charming Scoundrel, it's gonna, you know, ping you on the way out as it does coming in.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and that's a great point, because yeah, if you get to, oh my goodness, okay, so there's Silver Scrutiny from Riley. There's 2 mana open. That mountain off the top here represents a double spell on this turn. Now we maybe see a counter spell coming off the other side, depending on what was drawn off that Silver Scrutiny.
Yeah. So one thing to note: priority passed very quickly after the resolution.
Mm-hmm.
So counterspell is viable, but we also saw this Charming Scoundrel. So I think this turn you go for it.
100%. Yeah, no, if I'm doing this, Feldon is becoming monstrous.
So I'd actually put it on the Charming Scoundrel because you want to.
Well, my thought there was you want the Wicked Roll to fall off. Is that what you're saying?
So yeah, the Wicked Roll will fall off, so you deal a point of damage. But also, if they do have a piece of targeted removal in that instance, them killing Feldon doesn't net you any advantage. Them killing Charming Scoundrel makes them lose a life.
True. Okay, fair point.
So it's kind of, you're trading a point of power in the fact that, like, the rolls replace themselves for the 1/1.
Mm-hmm.
But usually, like, you want to steer removal to your things that have the Wicked rolls. Right. And the rolls are actually really interesting. They're a little confusing when they first came out, but, like, I played a lot of Limit, and they had a really, like, nice. So, like, in this case, right, like, Void Rend was, and it seems like that's what they drew for the turn. But, like, they're basically in a situation now that they can't actually win the game.
Yeah, and now you just let this Void Rend resolve the Wicked, trigger, kills them. Yeah, and that's, I mean, to your point, when you're going up against those white aggro lists, if you hit them with a sweeper and you stabilize the board, even if you're at 2 life, you're probably fine. If you're going up against red, if you're at 1 or 2 life, any card off the top of their deck could be your last. And there's
Well, they were
just is
fairly
what it is.
limited. Like they had some life
Mhm.
gain options. Like they could have got the Black Virtue, but anything
Mhm.
that was just say kill creature, no upside, would have kind of got them in. So in this match here, it's a little interesting because they have a density of planeswalkers that's not just the Emperor. The Lithomantic barrages can be reasonable. I do like Urbrask's Forge against this deck. The one thing I
Mhm.
want to see is the number of farewells, because that's usually going to be the mirror breaker. One farewell.
Ooh, okay.
But the thing is, this version is playing 3 Void Rens, which does have the ability to hit. So I think what you do, wisely taking out the Monstrous Rage, as we kind of
Mhm.
called out, bring in your Planeswalker package, and then probably. So I know a lot of the lists play Furnace Punisher. I don't like it in the
Yeah.
sense three mana is a lot to just not impact the board the turn it comes down. There's so much cheap removal that they can answer it. It just gets cut up with sweepers. I I wouldn't be bringing it in, and I would just cut a Phoenix chick. Like Koth has a lot more utility, I think, just
Okay.
because it presents a threat that they need to answer that doesn't get hit by removal. It thins out your deck, and the ultimate wins games. Koth is actually my favorite Historic Brawl deck,
Oh, nice. Okay.
so
I
I'm a little biased there.
I respect it. I've gone up against Koth a couple of times, and yeah, you can honestly do mono red control with Koth. It's kind of wild, and if I enjoy doing a lot of creature based mid range stuff, and so I'm familiar with how red can take it down, and Koth is pretty darn good. All right, so here we go. We're going into game 2. Kylie on mono red up a game. Here we see a starting hand with 4 mana. They just draw another mountain as well. But they have 1 Monastery Swiftspear, Bloodthirsty Adversary on 2, and then Forge on 3. I mean, the curve out's right there. Looks pretty good.
So one thing you might want to do is play the Mishra on 2, especially with drawing another line there.
Mm.
If they have open mana, I don't think you want to stick the Forge. Okay, so Make the Spear coming down here is impactful. There is a line next turn, and this is probably the worst 2 cards you could have drawn in succession, just Mountain after keeping 4 lands. So jamming it into open mana is a little risky.
Definitely. Because if this thing
This
sticks, you're going to
Forge,
have a great day. But if it doesn't,
yeah,
or it gets Void Rend, yep.
because the upside. So if they don't have Void Rend and they have just any removal, they kill the Swiss Sphere anyway, so the prowess doesn't matter. In the scheme of things, like 1 additional power is not going to make too much of a difference. Drawing another Forge there is great.
Absolutely. Let's see, you got another Rend. Well, the
Okay.
trigger's going to happen. We're going to combat. Okay, the Swiftspear does have a throat.
Okay, so this Forge sticking is going to be a big impact.
Absolutely. Oh, and here comes Godric. And when the Forge creates its token, that'll be the second permanent entering the battlefield.
Yeah, really nice synergy here.
Absolutely. And kudos for tapping the Mishra's Foundry there so you'd be able to take advantage of the fire breathing a little bit more. Unfortunately, to go for the throat was a clean answer there. Yeah, Urbrask Forge allows the red deck to have some game in kind of these later game grinds, which is generally where I definitely believe, my understanding that deck traditionally struggles when the game goes long. And
Yeah,
yeah,
while you do
that's a
have
great
like
way.
Bloodthirsty Adversary for some flashback effects, you're really not on that card draw, and we're seeing like Riley now with kind of the desperation. To me, that suggests that they didn't have a line in hand.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, I think, the time where you fire up this Foundry, get those points in.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, slap all you can.
Yeah, and I think a big thing here is we've seen kind of folks pulling away from Farewell, where at one
Mm-hmm.
point, it was the de facto, and we've seen Sunfall, just given that it has the ability to, replace itself, give you a threat, kind of serve as a win condition on its own.
Mm-hmm. All right, Teferi Who Sows the Sunset. Notably, its +1 does gain 2 life and untap lands. So that is problematic to some degree. Although with the Forge down, especially after drawing that, Play with Fire, I think Kylie's got this. Because this is 4 damage on the token. So this is 8 damage represented on board. If Riley has something, kind of need to use it now. All right. Is there a 2-mana answer? Shadow's Edict. Sacrifice a token. The only token is the Forge token, which was honestly going to die anyway, but it is the most power, so this makes sense.
So it's actually an interesting line here because you're 1 point short. So the consideration is, are we pointing this damage face or are we taking out Teferi? Teferi kind of neutralizes the play with fire anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So there's not really a kind of warranted effect there. Teferi also could represent just minusing to find something like Void Rend.
Right.
You can also find a Wandering Emperor. So there is some instances there where it can have an effect. This is the turn where they could hit the 6th mana and have Farewell in hand.
So is it worth going down 2 cards in hand and 5 potential damage to the opponent to get Teferi off the board here?
So
I think you can make a good case for it, you know?
think all things. So Teferi goes to 8, that's 5. You're still 1 short if they Farewell. Because they go to 8, you do 5, you have this Mishra.
Mm-hmm.
But then that does open you up to any haste, any burn. A second Mishra lets you put some power on it. So it's, and we see Killy here kind of. So I think knowing that now, then we do this face.
Yep. Put them down to 1. It kind of incentivizes them to uptick Teferi here to gain the 2. Although with the Foundry that wouldn't be, or with the Force that wouldn't be enough. So if they don't have some kind of sweep or some kind of way to gain some life here, they're probably going to downtick Teferi and go searching for it. Because otherwise, that's that. You know, and Rodney doesn't know that the play with fire is on top, but they do know that Kylie is happy to see it. So, or at least it was acceptable to put on top.
So
Chromos Sea Shark, okay. That actually represents a bit of an issue, but yeah, the play with fire is now no longer lethal on its own.
Well, the thing is, you can still fire up the Mishra. You still have the token.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, I guess cut down would be the only way that they get out of this. And
right.
Assuming they play cut down.
Yeah,
they don't play cut down.
Okay. Yeah, send them all in. 8 damage represented. The most you can block would be 4. By putting the Chromos Sea Shark in front of the token. I'm assuming this means they have some kind of removal for the token itself. But even that, if the chick connects, yep.
Yeah, so just play it, go to damage step, just in case they have something weird.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I didn't check sideboard. It wouldn't be unreasonable to see cut downs on the side.
Yeah, so let the damage go through, bring them down to 2, and then you get priority post-combat.
Oh, gives them the thinking!
Thinking! Yeah, there it is. Oh, man.
Think of the top 8!
This video is brought to you by MagicJank.com, the spiciest cards for your sauciest decks. Buy and sell Magic the Gathering products and gear today on MagicJank.com.
Looking for the latest comic book to add to your collection? How about the last card for that Magic the Gathering Commander deck? Well, the comic book store's got you covered. Shop online at comicbookstore.tcgplayerpro.com or come in person at 30 North Main Street, Glassboro, New Jersey. Pizza people, are you enjoying the content? Don't forget, subscribe to the channel. It's free. Hit that bell icon as well. That way, anytime any of our new content comes out, you're able to see it right away. Hey, leave a comment down below as well. Tell us what you're going to play in the next event, or tell us what you're enjoying about the video. Don't forget, check out the description too. We've got tons of great content down below. And on top of that, we're going to have our tournament schedule too. So get in on it. Hope to see you.
anybody out there who's interested, if you are going to be in Vegas, come find us. Team Magic Jank will be there. Hollywoodpizza himself, the host of these tournaments, who makes these possible, is going to be there. I'll be there. Yeah, we have Damien F16. We have Carlos C. Favredo Jr. We also have Isaiah MTG, draft genius, if I may say. Headology, speaking of, is also going to be there. Like it's going to be a party, man. It's going to be an absolute blast.
I heard instead of tokens, Hollywood's just giving out slices of pizza to anyone that comes out to him. I don't know where he's getting all this convention pizza, but
yeah, he's actually going to be purchasing just a huge like walk-along cart full of pizza, and if you come up and just say, "Yo, dude, pizza," he gives you pizza. That's just he's going to do it. It's crazy. I don't know how he's going to afford it, but yeah. And now that we've said it out loud, he has to. That's the idea. Anyway, so here we are. We're in the finals here at the PizzaBox Open. Mono Red versus Golgari. And this has been a very quick top 8, and I suspect this final is going to be no different.
So we are doing picture-in-picture. You have Golgari on the screen, but I am behind the camera of Mono Red. Excellent. Now, I'd say in a heavy removal-based matchup, Urabrask Forge is the best card you can have. We're going to see one get cast this turn.
Yeah, we are.
We are going to see one get cast next turn, most likely. We are going to see another one get cast after that. We are Forge-tron.
And
the best 3 cards.
And looking at Big Goon's hand, that is going to get some work done because Big Goon has access to Liliana here and Sheoldred, obviously, that we get to see, which is probably one of the best case scenarios, assuming that Kylie doesn't have a way to get rid of Sheoldred, which main deck might be a little tricky, but not impossible.
Okay, that's a little interesting. They're hovering the concede button.
Interesting.
Seems a little... So they do have a Godric, so they can go Forge this turn, punch in a couple points, block with the adversary, go Godric next turn. They also have Charming Scoundrels in hand. So if they hit a land, they can go Scoundrel, make a treasure, cast Godric, attack for a bunch, have the Charming Scoundrel back. But again, Sheoldred just the bane of everyone's existence.
Pretty much. Yeah. No, Sheoldred, I mean, yeah, it's a 4/5 that gains you life and pings your opponent. I mean, we all know it. It's incredibly powerful. And specifically, if you're a mono red mage, she's incredibly difficult to block. She's tough to attack through, and she gains your opponent life. Like, it's just... It is just a cavalcade of all the worst things. So Charming Scoundrel is going to move.
All right.
Yeah, and there's the scoop. Okay, wow, can't get through Sheoldred apparently, or yeah, doesn't believe they can. Interesting.
All right. So they did do the loot there, trying to hit. So they made more to Witchstalker Frenzy.
Okay. See, I feel like trying to establish as many forges as possible. I mean, you didn't have a ton of time, and Sheoldred was going to be gaining life, and there was interaction in Big Goon's hand. But I don't know, that scoop felt a little premature. Big Goon had an advantage, but I don't think Kylie was completely out of it.
I think in the finals you play a couple more turns.
Mm-hmm.
Mind you, the thing to keep in mind at this point, like we're talking. Like I've only been on for 3 rounds. You've been on talking, but talking and playing are 2 different things. These competitors are now. This is their 10th round of Magic today.
Oh yeah, no, it's definitely been a long day for both of these folks. So yeah,
my go-to GP motto is O2 drop, go get lunch.
Hey, I'm right there with you, man. Yeah, absolutely. I've only participated in a couple of competitive events, but I'm that guy who's still playing at 1 and 3, and people are like, "Why are you bothering?" It's like, I came here to play Magic. I want to play Magic. Like that's.
I'm not gonna lie. There was a sealed like RCQ yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So my friends are like, "Oh, come out!" They're like, "It starts at 12."
Okay, sure.
I'm like, "How many rounds?" They're like, "Well, last time, like when my buddy stopped, like he went to the finals, he's like, yeah, I got out at like 10 p.m." I'm like, that's like 10 hours of Magic too much for me. I'm like, I want my pre-release show up 3 hours, come home, eat dinner.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I want to get to the game store at 6 and be home by 9. That's yeah. All right. So here, looking at Big Goon's hand, there are some phenomenal cards. Unfortunately, only 1 land. So I think this is a pretty easy mull, even on the draw. Yep.
So we had 4 lands, 2 Kamanos, and a Forge Mill into 7 spells, no lands.
Oof.
Mull to 5. We got 5 lands, Kumano, Witchstalker Frenzy. So
Ooh, okay.
I think that opener might have been sufficient just behind the power of Forge. Like Kumano's had some redundancy, but I don't think in this matchup your individual card quality is so much lower than your opponent's
Absolutely.
that going down cards, especially when you don't have card advantage, is not the best. And hitting your lands, you had some reasonable threats. Again, Forge is the best card. We're going to see a Godric come down and get the added bonus.
Okay, excellent.
Now,
Yeah.
the two cards in hand are Sokuzen, which can be activated through the channel ability with the reduction. So we get another Godric. And then notably, the answer to Shieldred is in hand this time with Witchstalker Frenzy. How are things on Goon's side?
Oh, wow. So Goon actually does not have a third land, unfortunately. So they have the Go for the Throat here. In hand, there is a Glissa Sunslayer, Blossoming Tortoise, and Shieldred. If the lands show up, Goon is going to be all set. Additionally, there are 2 cut downs, which can help survive. And that was a Graveyard Trespasser off the top. So Goon is just stuck on 2 lands. You know, at this point, they've answered what Kylie was doing pretty comfortably, but...
And then meanwhile, on this side, we have only lands.
Lovely.
So that Go for the Throat was kind of clutch, though. Just being able to kind of shut off.
Oh, absolutely. That cut off the pressure big time. You know, if there was any non-land they were going to draw, I'm pretty sure they were glad it was that one. Yeah, not Trespassers live. So yeah, Witchstalker Frenzy coming down. And just like that,
this Golgari list is quite the nightmare for mono red. Cheap removal, hard to deal with threats. Like you're 2-for-1ing yourself all across the place.
Yeah, and the nightmare continues with that Glissa. So unless we can trigger Celebration, Godric is going to be grounded.
Well, you know what triggers Celebration on its own?
There are actually a lot of cards in that deck too. Forge
in
does.
Particular, Charming
Scoundrel. Yep.
So Scoundrel comes down. I would say play a Wicked token on the Godric. It gets flying. You can Fire Breathing 2. That gets it to 7 damage.
That's a lot. Yeah.
And I think you just push all in here.
Yeah, because that puts Big Goon down to 1.
And then it basically invalidates them. Blowing up the enchantment doesn't do much because they just take damage. It's like the last thing.
Yeah, exactly. So at this point, and actually Glissa can't, I mean, Glissa's attack on the Crackback is not going to be particularly good because if they choose the draw card mode, they're dead. And additionally, the turn after, they need to somehow gain life here. And this card is not going to do it on its own. Because right now, if Godric attacks, it's over.
Even just killing Godric, it's over.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Can you hear my dog snoring?
A little bit, but yeah. So the card that Big Goon drew was a Llanowar Waste. So they have Shieldred, they have Tortoise, they have the the Cottage as well. But if Godric dies, the Wicked token goes to the graveyard and pings for 1. So I believe that's game, and Kylie's got it, and we go on to game 3. All right. So here we go. So Glissa is going to attack. Destroy target enchantment.
On their own terms.
Yep. They're choosing how they go, and this is how they want to do it. Fair enough.
And that is the way you beat Shieldred. On a multi-5 mono red redemption arc.
Let's go. And to be fair, Big Goon did miss a land drop. Missed, I think, 2 turns of land drops, which definitely hurt. No question. That said, they had action. You know, they were using cut downs. They were using Go for the Throats. They had ways to stay in. It just wasn't quite enough. It wasn't quite there. Oh, yeah. So here we go. Game 3 in the finals. Golgari versus Mono Red. Here we go. And actually, I appreciate the avatars that both of our players have selected because it's Gandalf versus Yargle, which I don't know when that fight is happening or how much tickets are, but sign me up. I am there.
You shall not pass.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I can't wait. Like I'm in. I want to see this. All right. Cool. And notably, the Golgari player is done sideboarding, and we are waiting on red. All right.
So kind of just hedging some decisions. We see the Jaya come out, opting to go with another play with fire, so just lowering the curve. So I think Killy just realizing if the game goes past turn 5, I lose.
Mm-hmm. Don't let it go past turn 5. Yeah, exactly. Seems like an easy solution. All right, so the Restless Cottage here, established on turn 1. That's pretty darn good. And here we have a Mosswood Dread Knight. Just establish that 3/2 for 2.
So nice one coming down here, Felden. So the Mosswood does have the ability to trade, but not a trade you necessarily want to make, just letting you find 3.
All right. That Felden does, in fact, have a throat. And Big Goon is going to be attacking, choosing to be aggressive even against the red deck. Interesting. Okay.
Well, one thing to always be mindful of, the added text on Kumana with the exile. Again,
True.
like this Mosswood, not necessarily something you want to start trading off, but Kumano did its job. Pings, powers, and celebrates.
Oh, yeah. For 1 mana, that was quite a bit of value.
It slices, it dices.
Oh, yeah. So here we go. We got a Shadow and another Dread Knight. Putting the power on the board. So Big Goon decided, you know what? I've got a pretty aggressive hand. Let's make this a race. And next turn, there is actually the one card in Big Goon's hand is a forest. And so as a result, the cottage is going to be in the mix next turn. Or the Misery Shadow could just become huge. So,
yeah. So Killy is drawing nothing but Godric's.
Oh, no.
So 2 Godric's, but notably 2 Sokuzans in hand. So the channel can work to throw in like 4 points of damage, gives you 2 blockers. Now the trample is obviously relevant out of the Mosswood, but could buy a couple turns to just kind of punk through. There's also a single copy of the Witchstalker Frenzy in hand. So depending on what angle they want to go, they could play a land, Witchstalker, the Mosswood, attack in. I personally like just Sokuzaning here, get the blockers, and kind of going from there.
Yeah. Well, because at the end of the day, if you can chump the Misery Shadow, the 6 damage from the Knights is definitely relevant. Like, it'll definitely add up, but the Misery Shadow could hit for as much as 7 damage next turn if you don't have a blocker live to deal with it. Yeah. Also, huge shout outs to Jaffer for the raid. Thank you so much for sharing your community with us. We really appreciate it. And Raiders, welcome. We are here in Game 3 of the PizzaBox Open Standard. And we've been seeing a lot of fantastic stuff. And here we are, Game 3 of the finals. Golgari midrange versus Mono Red aggro. All right.
So, minor point here that we'll see is opting to play the second Sokuzan, which, if they attack with the 3 creatures, turns on Witchstalker Frenzy's reduction.
Oh. Interesting. Let's see what happens. Are they playing around it? Do they know? Looks like they are playing around it. They do know that the Witchstalker Frenzy is in the list. So they're going to assume. But by attacking with the cottage and getting the food token, that now effectively adds 3 life. Which is pretty darn nice. All right.
So a bit interesting there to go with that line, just given that now Godric kind of gets shut off. I think I would have held the second Sokuzan. Just to give you, again, more blockers to come up the board, but also the ability with Godric to just come in.
Right. Yeah, and if you're Big Goon, you're making this trade all day and not thinking twice about it. Granted, there's another Godric coming down, so
yeah.
But you didn't know that.
Because the thing is, you could have Sokuzan get the flying for the other turn, Then even then you had access to Godric if you flooded out. Godrics
Right.
count celebration if they cast themselves. So throwing those all together.
Absolutely. All right, so the Dread Knight's coming in. Now, Big Goon also has the Dread Knight in the graveyard. It's in that use it or lose it state. All right. So they can let one go, and they're going to keep the mana open. They do have a pretty meaningful card in hand if Kylie throws down an enchantment such as Kumano Faces Kakazan. But here comes Godric in the air yet again, third time. Yeah, so Big Goon just eats the food, braces for impact. And this is presumably going to be a 5-power Godric, or do they leave the 1 mana open?
So
We
it's
know
an
what that
interesting
is.
line because then you telegraph the fact. I think you activate here
Mm-hmm.
because you are just getting the point of damage in. You're going to be
Right.
chump blocking regardless on this board state. And if your opponent's tapping out for the cottage, then shields are down.
Right. And to be fair, so I was commenting earlier, as though Big Goon knew that the Witchstalker Frenzy was in hand. We don't necessarily know that. It's very possible that they chose to attack with only 2 creatures just to keep blockers back, which is also very reasonable. But yeah, Terra Sunder getting rid of Godric, that's huge. All right. So Lord Skitter, this attack is either 3 damage or lose something on your board. So this is good value, and that Misery Shadow can be a 3/3 on the block.
So going to draw step. So lethal can be achieved through. Okay, so we have Kumano. So Kumano deals a ping. It's a prowess. Witchstalker Frenzy is another point. So it's 3, 4, 5 damage. And then they'd be dead on the crackback.
Right.
So Lightning Strike would have been lethal.
Yep.
Play with Fire would have been 3, 4, 5, 6. Would have been lethal. So just 1 point short.
Oh my goodness. All right. Comes Kumano, get that prowess. Now they can attack with the Swift Spear, blast the shadow, keep the spirit back to block.
I
get him for 3 damage. Is that worth it?
I guess you can attack in. They block with shadow. You frenzy the skitter.
Ooh, okay. Yep.
I don't mind that line because if you do that, you're basically dead to a removal spell.
Right.
On the way back. Whereas this, no, I wouldn't do that.
Yeah, they're trying to push in, trying to ensure the damage. Still doing this before blocks. It's an aggressive choice, and they might end up paying for it. We'll see.
Because against this deck, there's so much removal.
Mm-hmm.
Mind you, they'd still be at 1 theoretically.
Right.
With a piece of removal, because they go Foundry here. They get the token, but the token doesn't have haste. It's
right.
Goblin Rat Master, not Goblin Rabble Master, so no haste token.
Exactly. All right. And that, using the Foundry there instead of the Cottage was a very shrewd decision because they actually drew a really good 3-drop that we're going to see here in about a second. Yeah, post-combat, it is no doubt coming down.
So 1, 2, 5, 6, 7. So you have to block here just proactively against Graveyard Trespasser.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's creature in opponent's yard. So normally I'd say, like in circumstances where a deck doesn't have reach, being at 1, being at 4 in this matchup doesn't really make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes you'd probably want to have like the 2 creatures.
Right. But yeah, here we are. And it's funny you mentioned Graveyard Trespasser, actually, because that is the one card in Big Goon's hand. So allowing it to all come in here, Big Goon wins this match and takes down today's open. And here we go. That's exactly what's going to happen. Boom. All right. So Kylie weighed the risk and the reward, took a shot, and against all odds, Big Goon had the one card that could seal the deal.